Hey, it's Alan Berg. Before we get into this episode, I'm starting something called Ask Me Anything. That's right. You submit your questions and they could become an entire episode or something that I answer at the end of an episode. To submit your questions, look for the red button at podcast.alanberg.com. That's right, podcast.alanberg.com. Click on the red button, submit your question, and maybe you'll hear it here on the podcast. Thanks. Tariffs, supply chain, so much uncertainty now. Listen to this episode and find out how it will affect you. Welcome to another episode of the Wedding Business Solutions Podcast. I'm your host, Alan Berg. I'm a speaker, sales trainer, consultant, author, and I help businesses like yours sell more, profit more, and have a little more fun doing it. Enjoy this episode. Hey, it's Alan Berg. Welcome back to another episode of the Wedding Business Solutions Podcast. I am so happy to have my friend Shane McMurray on to talk about the craziness that's going on in the marketplace these days. Shane, welcome.
Hey, Alan, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
If you don't know Shane and the Wedding Report, you should. He's got a great information that he puts out about stats. Shane, how often do you put out the Wedding Report?
Well, we do stuff all year round, but a general update every year for what's going on. Sure. Yeah.
Right. So the reason I invited Shane on right now is because I got an email where it was talking about the impact of tariffs. Now, we're not going to talk about specific numbers with tariffs because between when we record this and probably when we stop recording this, it will have changed already. But the concept is still there because it's affected things not just with those numbers, but it's affected people ordering, not ordering, or whatever. So Shane, first of all, what prompted you to put that out? Because that was not your annual thing. This was a, summary of impact by segment from minimal to severe ratings.
Yeah. I really did it because it affects, there are different segments in this business, right? We all have different, there's, I don't know, 17 or so different segments in the business. And I really wanted to understand what the impact was for each one. And I wanted people to understand what their impact could be. So that was really the reason I did it.
And what I loved about it is, there's obvious ones because I've been doing a lot of stuff with bridal shops, and a lot of dresses come from China, and
Yep.
that's an obvious one, right? So if the tariff is X, who's gonna eat that or not eat that, or you can't charge a customer more for something that you've already taken the sale for, right? So that was an obvious one. But then there were so many other things in there that weren't quite as obvious where it could affect it. So what was there anything that surprised you?
I mean, not really. Knowing that mostly products that we purchase, whether it's dresses or stuff that we buy for decorations, things like that, accessories, are already, most of those are made in China or outside the country. We just don't
Right.
have the capacity to make them anymore, and we can't make them as cheap.
Mhm.
So we get them from outside the country, and that nothing really surprised me there. The big thing probably is that. If you are in a business part of it where you don't necessarily are impacted by buying products, if you have to buy new equipment or something breaks, then you could be impacted, right? So,
Right. Right. And that's what I was looking there. It may not affect you today, but there is an effect every time you have to buy equipment, right? Whether it's the price just went up, or in the case of this, the price could jump all of a sudden from one day to the next because of that tariff. But something
absolutely.
that I've been noticing is people in Seattle, friends of mine in Seattle, commenting on how the port of Seattle is like quiet, like no ships coming in. The port of LA, no ships coming in. And is it that the ships are sitting out at sea waiting to come in, or they never left China?
I've been reading that they pretty much never left. I mean, a lot of people canceled orders, and basically the manufacturing companies stopped manufacturing goods because of the cost, right?
Yeah.
It's not, you can't pay it. If you have something sitting out there for $1 million and you have to pay $1 million in tariffs already, and then all of a sudden you've got this new thing that you've already paid for, you've already priced. I mean, a lot of manufacturers will price their goods in China as they're made, and when they're shipped over here, they pay the tariff, and then they get them in the store, but they're already priced. Well, what happens when you've already paid for all that? Now you've got double or even 1.5 times the existing tariff. And then all of a sudden, you've got to get a team there to logistically reprice everything and then get it redistributed. And then it's just a nightmare. So I would imagine a lot of companies just like, you know what, forget it. We're not even going to order right now. We're just going to have to run out. That's
Right.
it.
Now, when does the tariff get paid?
The tariffs get paid when the company that's buying the good receives the good. When it comes into port, you have to pay it before it's released.
Right. So the manufacturer is not paying it directly. A country is not paying it directly. The
Nope,
person who ordered those goods from that manufacturer, when they take possession of those goods, right?
that's correct.
That's what it is. Right. So, like you said, if a boat left wherever, it left China, it left Vietnam, it left Bangladesh or whatever, you know what the manufacturer cost of that is to
You
you.
already know. Yeah, you
Right.
already know what your costs are. Yeah,
Those ships aren't coming here in a day. So by the time that ship gets to a port,
yeah.
if that stuff comes off the port and you take possession. So if I read right, there are companies that will just abandon the goods, right? They'll just say, listen,
They
it's
can
not worth
abandon the
it.
goods and not pay the tariff. And then, I mean, I don't know how much of that actually probably happened, but I mean, I'm sure there's goods sitting there that no one's paying I'm not paying the tariff, right? So,
There it is.
but they
Yeah.
lost the money on it, right? Because they already paid for the goods most of the time.
Right. But at the time of this recording, tariffs have been as high as over 150% on certain goods. So you're saying, okay, my cost is X. Now I have 1.5 times that in a tariff on top of my cost of that. I'm going
Right.
to lose money on it. I'll lose less money by just saying it's not
You
mine.
probably depending on what it is, you might lose less money just abandoning it. Yeah, because
Right.
you're gonna have to pay double the tariff tax, and then you've got to figure out how to reprice and distribute, and then basically pass on that cost to your consumer, and they may or may not be willing to pay that.
Exactly. I mean, there's only so much elasticity there. I've seen some,
Yeah,
like with the bridal shops, there were some manufacturers saying, listen, we'll absorb some of that, you'll absorb some, and this way your price won't be as high,
yeah.
but still a lot higher. And then it's come down. And again, between when we're recording and whenever you guys are
Who
listening to
knows what
this,
it'll be tomorrow, right?
right, because this recording is going to live forever. So you could be listening to this a year from now, and the situation's completely different in one way or another. But
Yeah,
also think when people talk about bringing manufacturing here, the raw materials might still come from outside the country, be affected by a tariff, right?
yeah, for sure. Yeah, because
Yeah,
we don't produce all the raw materials. And then even if we could move the manufacturing here, I mean, it takes years to move manufacturing here.
right,
Doesn't happen overnight. So
right. Well, and the equipment to do that manufacturing could very well
where does
come
that come
right,
from, right?
right, or the metal to make that machinery to do that, or the computer stuff for that robot to assemble whatever, all of that
Well, a
kind of
lot of
stuff.
times, even if we manufacture a metal, or let's say we mine a metal here, we may not actually produce the final product in this country. We might ship it out and then it may go somewhere else.
Yeah,
Like car parts. I don't know if you, I mean, I
yeah,
learned this, but car parts, even let's say they made in Mexico, well, they might be made in Mexico, they'll come to the US, well, they may ship them back to Canada, and then Canada will ship them back to us. And so there's like double tariff situation happening there. It's
right.
crazy.
Right. That was the whole point of NAFTA, was to have this free trade zone so you could do that.
That's
If you look at the
correct.
window sticker, I bought a car about 6 months ago, and if you look at a window sticker, it tells you the percentage of parts that came from different places. So the car might be manufactured in Tennessee, but those parts have come from different places. I saw an ad the other day. I think it was the Polestar EV, electric vehicle,
Yeah.
and it big print, assembled in the U.S. Okay, assembled in the U.S.
Yeah. But those parts come from somewhere, right?
Right, and then they're making that what is it, the incentive, the government incentive for having an EV based upon the fact if X percent of the car was made in the U.S. versus not. Actually, even the parts of that, because again,
Right.
a lot of stuff is assembled here with parts from elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I would say that, I mean, I was just reading some stuff. I mean, a lot of these manufacturers have been kind of rerouting some of their goods since probably 2016-ish, 2017. They've been kind of rerouting their trade routes, changing the way that the goods are manufactured so that they could be manufactured in different countries and then basically sent here to avoid higher tariffs in one country versus the other. I mean, this happens a lot, but it takes a long time to reroute your goods and to renegotiate contracts and routes and things like that just to get stuff into the country. It's kind of crazy, but it takes a long time to do that stuff. You can't, it doesn't change overnight.
Yeah, I had seen that in the thread of tariffs, I think it might have been David's Bridal, just all of a sudden shipped everything that was sitting there in China, like 300,000 dresses or something crazy like
Whatever
that.
was available.
Yeah, just put it on the boats, get it over here before that happens. And then Apple was negotiating to build more of their stuff in India because they already have manufacturing there. So it's not starting from zero, it's just ramping it up.
That's
But
right.
again, you look at the components. We give no thought to this with your iPhone or your Android phone or whatever. You just pick it up and you use it.
Hmm.
You give no thought until it doesn't work, right? That's the only time we think about it,
It's true, right?
right?
Same thing
We
camera or
don't
whatever. Yeah,
we don't care how it works as long as it works. It's when it doesn't work that's the only time we care, right? So you think about it. Yes, you can ramp up the manufacturing, but you need your supply chain. You need to get the chips. You need to get the glass. You need to get all this stuff. It isn't sitting on a shelf somewhere, especially the special glass that's on these phones and all this stuff and those special chips.
that's
It's
right.
not just
Yeah,
sitting there. So we're all interconnected. So as much as, it'd be great if you could just get your stuff locally. What is it going to cost, right? What is it going to
yeah.
cost, and are your customers willing to pay more? And it's funny when I talk to people, you as a business are saying, hey, yeah, I'll charge more because I'm using all U.S. made, U.S. sourced, U.S. all this stuff. But when that same person is a customer, are you then looking for, hey, I want a better deal. I want something that's cheaper. And this started, wasn't it back in the Reagan administration? I think when a lot of stuff started going offshore.
Sure. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, America wanted cheaper goods. And so how do you
right.
do that? Okay, well, we have to manufacture somewhere else. We can't do it here. I mean,
Right.
in some of the jobs, I mean, honestly, some of these jobs, I don't think American workers would actually do some of these jobs. So if
Right.
you move them in other countries where you can get cheaper labor, they allow and cheaper, materials and things like that, then all of a sudden you can produce this product, ship it to here, and then you can pay a lot less, right,
Yeah.
than making it here. And even if you were to try to make it here, the material cost, the labor cost would be much, much more. So you'd still have to pay more if you could get the people to actually do the work.
Right. And that's something that, again, was created years ago when we're pushing everybody to go to college instead of go to trade school, right? When apprenticeships, all but went away and they're coming back again, which is
They
great
are coming
because,
back, yeah.
yeah, because, not everybody is going to be a knowledge worker, right? Not everybody wants to
Right.
do that. My younger son, graphic designer, and just got tired of sitting in front of a computer screen, right? So he works with his hands now. He does custom fabrication at this company. Like if you wanted a custom wine cellar, or Guy
Yeah.
Fieri opened the restaurant, they made the tables. The governor's mansion in Pennsylvania, unfortunately, had a firebombing at Passover. And it's a historic building, and his company is recreating the moldings to match and stuff like that. I mean, he's working with his hands. He's actually hand carving rosettes,
Yeah.
but he didn't go to college for that.
Yeah.
Right?
It's funny you say that. My niece's son, who just graduated high school, he went into the military. He wanted to go into the military. Well, he started off doing, behind the computer work, intelligence work. And he just said he couldn't stand being behind the computer all the time. So he ended up changing his role into being a medic. He wanted to be a medic so he could get his hands into doing stuff and kind of being involved in combat and a bunch of other stuff. And it was crazy, but he just said I couldn't stand behind the computer. It just couldn't do it all day. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's happening.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be the same way. I'm a social being, and I'll stay on Zoom all day because I'm still being social, right? But what I learned about myself is sitting by myself and writing a report is like just painful for me. And and it's the same information I would give you one on one, but now I have to sit and write that. And that's what I know about myself. So I do website reviews. I do them on Zoom, and people say, "Hey, could review my website?" I said, "Sure, let's get on Zoom. It's being recorded. There's a transcript. You're getting all of that." But if I have to sit there and write a report, it's like I want to grow hair to pull it out. I mean, it's just it's just
I'm with you. Yeah,
right,
I like to listen. Like when I learn, I listen and learn. Right.
right.
That's just how I do it.
Yeah, I do audiobooks, and what is it? Audible said I listened to over 70 books last year. I don't think I finished them
Good for
all.
you, man.
Uh,
That's great.
But I'm doing two or three at a time. Like I was just driving now and I'm listening to a book, an AI book. And then when I'm working out, I just finished Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, right?
Hmm.
Famous book. I had never read it. So I did.
Let's do it, right?
Right. And that's it. I'm all over the place. It was one on Muhammad Ali that I did recently. It's just keeping my brain active different
That's
ways.
right. Yeah, I
Um,
love it.
but it's funny because I write real books, like physical books and Kindles and audio books, but I understand everybody learns differently. So,
Okay.
and that's what the podcast, we keep these short because people love that they can hear the whole thing. So getting back to the content here, um, what do you see as far as impact of the wedding industry with the tariff supply chain stuff like that? Is there anything like you want people to focus on? Anything you think that they should be watching out for?
I mean, I know if there's, unfortunately, I don't know if there's really anything to watch out for except just be aware of what that the market is changing and it's dynamic,
Mm.
right? So it could change tomorrow, change next week. So just be aware. Um, Probably should start thinking about your contracts and building in. I mean, it's like COVID all over again, right? So people didn't have this stuff about COVID or maybe these things in their contracts, and now all of a sudden you've got this new thing you've got to deal with. So maybe just start thinking about how do we implement cost changes like this into our contracts if it
Yeah.
impacts you, especially for the probably the attire market and anything that dealing with products that would be high impact scenarios. You're going to
Right.
have to deal with that. So those are probably the big things I would look out for right now.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was
Like you
also
said,
probably just say, figure out, and some people are in probably direct contract with specific suppliers. So, but you might want to think about how do I deal with my supply chain in general and start looking at where can I diversify a little bit more? How can I maybe route things differently or which suppliers could I get? I mean, you're going to have to start thinking about it.
yeah. Yeah. That whole force majeure and all those things we never paid attention to in the contracts. So I'm wondering, and again, you need to talk to a lawyer about this. If you
For
were going to
sure.
put in a clause in your contract that we can raise your rate if this goes up, like you said, a direct product like a dress. Okay, you bought a dress, it's coming from someplace, right? This is not just about China because the tariff can change anywhere, right?
Well, it's 10% across the board for everybody, just right
Right.
now.
Right. So
Period. End of
I
story.
I wonder. My question to an attorney would be, okay, can we say, okay, that on the day that you bought, the tariff was 10%, and if the tariff, on the day it comes in is different, can I change your price? Right. That would be a thing. It was funny not funny, but during COVID, somebody called me a caterer, and their food costs had gone up dramatically. And they said, could you help us word a message to our customers that we're going to raise their price because of it? And I said, okay, first thing is, does your contract allow that? And if your
Yeah,
con
for
and
sure.
if your contract allows it, then we can talk about that, right? Not that I agree with it, but I'll help you with that. And
Yeah.
they came back and said, no, the contract doesn't allow that. I said, okay, there's nothing to talk about, right? Because,
Nothing to talk about. Yeah.
but I asked the question. I said, have you ever had your price of supplies, in this case, food and stuff, go down? Because
Yeah.
food costs change all the time, right? And they
Yeah.
said, yes. I said, have you ever lowered somebody's price because your food cost went down? And they said,
And
no.
no, of course not, right?
Right,
Because
right. I
yeah,
said, so you're trying to have your cake and eat it too here. No pun intended for a caterer, but you're trying to have your cake and eat it too. I said, so you price yourself so that you're going to have some of that. If you're bringing goods in, if you're a florist and you're getting your oasis or you're getting your vases or you're getting your ribbons or whatever from over, from outside the country, you're going to have price fluctuations. Flowers, if you're sourcing your flowers, certain
yeah,
flowers, certainly certain times a year, right? They're
for
not in
sure.
season. What are you
Yeah,
doing? You're getting them from South America, you're getting them from someplace
that's
else.
right.
So you always have fluctuations there, and you should always price for that. And then again, you were talking about the indirect costs. If I need a new camera, a new lens, or whatever, that's coming from somewhere. If I need a new DJ controller or speakers, are they being manufactured outside the country, right?
Mhm.
Everybody's got something somewhere. If you just look around, right? We're looking at computer screens
Yeah,
and
yeah,
microphones and cameras and printers and you know, where's it coming from? We don't pay a lot of attention to a lot of those small things, but they add up. It's just like fuel costs there. That affects everything. Delivery costs, the airlines.
Transportation, delivery. Yeah. I mean, think
Right.
about jewelry for a second. The cost of gold has gone up and down, right? But it keeps rising, and it could fluctuate a couple $100s in a day. So if you're a jewelry manufacturer and you're trying to figure out how much am I going to charge for this ring based on gold prices, it's almost impossible. It's got a fixed period of time. You got to buy some amount of gold, and you're going to have to go, okay, cool, that's our price at this point in time, and that's what we're going to have to charge. And you
Right.
have to factor that in, like the flowers situation, right? So the problem with right now is that we don't know how it's going to change from day to day. If it was just a fixed rate and we said, okay, 10% across the board, and we said that was it, and you could build that into your business and absorb the 10% or raise it on later and pass it on. But right now you don't know. One week it's X, the next week it's X, and it's hard for a business to plan. So it's
Well,
a difficult time.
yeah, I think what's different, if I think about a florist and you're getting flowers, you have historical data to say, okay, over the last 10 years, 15, 20 years or whatever, COVID, not COVID, all this stuff,
Yeah.
recessions, you name it. We've gone through all this kind of stuff. You have that fluctuation. I think what this did, because it was so quick, so drastic, is it took that and then added another layer on in the case of, the China one that went up to 145% or 160% or whatever it was. You can't predict that, right? You can
No.
predict that there's going to be a drought, a La Nina or whatever, and it's going to affect your flower prices. But the flowers are only one element of a cost of goods, right? Because it's not, right? It's different when you have the fixed good product or the finished product, like that camera body or like that speaker or whatever, the components that went into that. And like we said, it might have left the dock and what you're paying for it. So you thought, right? Because this is
Yeah.
not from your manufacturer. That's what's different about it. So,
Yeah.
final thoughts. Any final thoughts for people listening, and then you're going to tell us about the wedding report and how they can find out more about it.
I would just say look at your supply chain, figure out ways that you can diversify a little bit and stop. I know a lot of people are in contracts, especially dress companies have specific contracts. Figure out how to diversify, figure out how to probably look at your contract, see if there's anything you can do there. And then just, try and be as strategic as you can about the situation and make some negotiations, diversify your supply chain a little bit. I mean, it's really, I don't know, it's hard. It's very difficult. I've talked to multiple manufacturers and they're just in the jewelry space, and it's difficult because the fluctuation of everything is it's hard. Just stay strong and try to keep plowing forward.
Well, again, what's interesting is they're used to the price of gold going up and down, up and down, up and down. They're used to that. This is a layer on top of that.
This is
That's
a layer
what's really,
on top of that. Yeah.
yeah. Because remember with the fuel prices, some of the airlines had locked in prices. They're it's a commodity. They're doing the futures, and they're buying the futures when they're
they
low.
buy it at a fixed
Right.
amount for a fixed rate. Yeah.
Right. Until those futures, are used up, and then it's other ones. This is that just all of a sudden, it's just that uncertainty on top of that. So, okay. So the wedding report, tell people how they can find out more about it.
Wedding.report. There you go. That's it.
Okay. It doesn't get much easier. Look in the show notes. You'll see some information about Shane, about the wedding report. Follow it, subscribe, get those, annually. You want to look at as many sources as you can to get ideas. Your average sale came very, very, very close to what one of the other major reports had come up with. If you look at two numbers and they're looking pretty close, you can trust that. Okay, this is what's happening over there. So thank you so much for joining me. Thanks for putting that email out. And that's why I get your emails, because I'm always looking at this going, oh, wow. And this was different. I was like, we need to talk about this.
Thanks for having me on, Alan. Appreciate it.
Right. Hi, it's Alan Berg. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Wedding Business Solutions podcast. If you have a suggestion for a future topic or guest, please go to podcast.alanberg.com and you can make your suggestion there. You can also do it at Ask Me Anything, which is a button on that page, or just email me at alan@weddingbusinesssolutions.com. And if you'd like to find out how I can help you with sales training, website review, consulting, or speaking for your group or organization, possibly at no cost to the organization, contact me directly, Alan at weddingbusinesssolutions.com. Thanks again for tuning in.